All right, good afternoon. I'll start off first with an update on two of our peacekeeping missions who are currently mourning the loss of their colleagues killed in the line of duty last week. In Lebanon, UNIFIL members of the members of the Lebanese Armed Forces, and the Ambassador of Ireland, Nula O'Brien, paid their final respects to Private Sean Rooney during a ceremony at Rafik Hariri International Airport before his body was returned home to his family. Private Rooney was killed, as you recall, in an incident last Wednesday. 3 other colleagues were injured. The investigation is still currently underway. During the memorial service, the head of UNIFIL, Major General Lázaro, posthumously awarded Private Rooney the UN medal and expressed his deepest sympathy to his family and colleagues. Meanwhile, in Mali, we're also grieving the loss of 2 UN police officers. They both are from Nigeria, Sergeant Nasiru Bawa and Sergeant Saratu Haruna. They were killed by an armed assailant while on patrol in Timbuktu. 4 other peacekeepers were injured and are recovering at a UN peacekeeping hospital. The head of the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali, El Kassim Wane, described the incident as deeply shocking and called for those responsible to be held accountable. A memorial service for the deceased peacekeepers will be held by our MINUSMA colleagues on Friday. Turning to Ukraine, the humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Denise Brown, today announced the release of an additional $20 million from the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund to support more than 300 civil society and community-based organizations or volunteer groups which have been supporting millions of people impacted by the war. Ms. Brown said that the work these groups are doing is impressive. However, 10 months later, their resources are being exhausted and they need support to sustain their vital assistance to the people of Ukraine. Funds managed by the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs have allocated more than $252 million for life-saving operations in Ukraine since 24th of February. This includes $192 million from the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund and $60 million from the Central Emergency Fund. More than $55 million has been used to provide generators to hospitals, to displacement centers and other critical facilities, as well as winter clothes and supplies to the people in Ukraine who face a severe energy crisis in the middle of winter. This has only been possible, as usual, thanks to the incredible support from our donors. This morning in the Security Council, Rosa Otunbayeva, the special representative of Afghanistan, the head of the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, briefed the Security Council on the situation in that country. She noted that the Taliban remain essentially in control of Afghanistan, but they're unable to satisfactorily address terrorist groups operating in the country. She also stressed that the only way forward for Afghanistan is through more pluralistic polity, where all Afghans, especially women and minorities, see themselves represented and have a real voice in decision-making. This is clearly not the case currently, she said. Also briefing council members was Martin Griffiths by video conference. He noted that 97% of Afghans live in poverty, 2/3 of the population need humanitarian assistance to survive, and 20 million people face acute hunger. Those remarks were shared with you. Also wanted to flag that earlier today the Security Council the Security Council members passed 2 resolutions relating to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The first renews the mandate of our peacekeeping mission for a year and sets 3 priority tasks: protection of civilians, support to demobilization, disarmament, reintegration, stabilization, security sector reform. It also authorizes the mission to support the Nairobi and Luanda processes and to work with the FARDC on the East African Community Regional Force. Members are also passed a new resolution delinking the sanctions issues from the mission so that it is under the sole purview of the Security Council. For more information, you can refer to the resolutions. Update from the Central African Republic, where Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of the Peacekeeping Department, is currently there to take stock of implementation of the mandate of our peacekeeping mission. This is his first visit to Bangui since the appointment of Valentine Rukwas-Biza, the head of the peacekeeping mission. Yesterday, Mr. Lacroix met with the Prime Minister, Felix Malua, and other senior government officials. They discussed options for reinforced cooperation between the UN and national authorities to improve security in the country and advance political processes. Mr. Lacroix also engaged with the ruling party, its allies known collectively as the Mouvance Présidentielle, as well as the Bloc Républicain pour la Défense de la Constitution and the Religious Platform. He met with women, youth representatives to understand the challenges they face, as well as opportunities for their participation in the political processes, and also engaged with the High Council for Communications, which is charged with battling hate speech. While in the Central African Republic, Mr. Lacroix is meeting our colleagues of the diplomatic community and is scheduled to meet the president, Faustin Archange Touadéra, tomorrow. The Elsie Initiative Fund for Women in Peace Operations announced today that the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali will receive $1.5 million grant. The project will facilitate an increase in the deployment of women police from Nigeria, Senegal, Togo by enabling the mission in Mali to build gender-sensitive camp facilities. Using the grant, the mission will build 7 accommodation units, 19 hygiene facilities, 4 laundry units, and dedicated recreational space. Women's contribution to the operational success of peacekeeping missions have been crucial. Mixed foreign police units improve engagements with the communities they serve and enhance the mission's capacity to deliver on its mandate. The Elsie Initiative Fund helps support women's meaningful participation in peacekeeping by creating an environment better adapted to them. In South Sudan, the Humanitarian Response Plan for 2023 was launched today with $1.7 billion to help 6.8 million of the most vulnerable men, women, and children who are impacted by conflict, climate shocks, and protracted displacement across the countries. The humanitarian coordinator for Sudan, Sarah Nyanti, noted that while the South Sudan crisis was competing with other global emergencies and dwindling funding, the people of South Sudan deserve more and not just efforts to allow them to survive. She also stressed the need for aid workers to have unimpeded and safe access to all those in need. More than 2/3 of South Sudan population will need some form of humanitarian protection assistance in 2023. 8 million people may be severely food insecure in the peak of the lean season between April and July of next year. The 2022 humanitarian response plan was funded at 67%. Turning to Somalia, the Food and Agricultural Organization today said the extended and unprecedented drought conditions in Somalia have left pastoral, agro-pastoral, and farming communities unable to cope. According to the latest projection updates between January and March 2023, 1.9 million people are expected to be in IPC Phase 4, which is emergency conditions. This forecast is forecast to increase to 2.7 million people between April and June. From May to December 2022, FAO has reached more than 700,000 individuals across 35 districts with cash and more than 40,000 individuals with agricultural inputs such as seeds, animal feed, and fertilizer. FAO has also treated 11 million animals to support their survival and trucked in 27 million liters of water to remote areas. FAO also plans to reach over 1 million people on the ground in the coming months. Haiti, the Pan-American Health Organization has confirmed that cholera vaccination campaign is underway in Haiti, and the country continues to face increase in the number of increase of cases in the disease. The campaign, which is led by the Public Health Ministry in Haiti with support from PAHO, will run until 28 December. It will focus on vaccinating people over the age of 1 in 5 in the most affected and vulnerable communes of the capital, Port-au-Prince, and other areas. There are confirmed cases in 9 of the 10 departments, although the rate of new suspected cases has slowed down in Port-au-Prince, but there are steep rises in the rest of the country. For its part, UNICEF is supporting the delivery of vaccines, including providing fuel to partners to maintain the cold chain and portable temperature control vaccine carriers to teams operating in communities. Today is the International Human Solidarity Day, and in a tweet, the Secretary General noted that we are living through difficult times. He said the world is not short on solutions, yet we face a shortage of solidarity. The Secretary General called on all to support and stand up for each other on International Human Solidarity Day. Speaking of solidarity, we want to thank our friends in Bucharest, for Romania has paid its budget dues in full, and that brings us up to 141. And that's it. If you have any questions left from yesterday. Ibtisam and then James.
I have two questions. First, on Tunisia and the elections they had, I think, on Sunday. Do you have any comments on that?
I'm waiting for some language on that, but I'll get right back to you.
Okay. And then the second subject is on Israel and Palestine. So the Israeli deported a Palestinian French human rights defender, Saleh Hamouri, to France. They revoked his residency in occupied East Jerusalem on the basis of so-called breach of allegiance to the State of Israel. He was arrested, as you know, in March without any charges, without trial. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think we're very much concerned by this development, and I think our human rights colleagues have also spoken out on it. On Tunisia, I can say you were referring to the arrest. Sorry, go ahead. Can you repeat your question on Tunisia?
In Tunisia, I was referring to the elections and the very low participation, which was around 11%.
I mean, I can't really, comment on the people's willingness to participate or not participate in elections. We obviously stand with the Tunisian people and remain committed to providing support as the country continues to face significant challenges, notably socioeconomic challenges, and we will. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, sorry. On Hamouri, you basically you referred me to the comments of the Human Rights Council, but my question, and I'm aware of that, but my question is, which message do you think this deportation of somebody who's working sends to people who works on human rights in the occupied Palestinian territory?
I would say it's a troubling development. James?
You earlier on summarised the beginning of the meeting that's taking place on Afghanistan. There's been an important development while the Security Council is meeting, which is a letter from the Higher Education Minister of the Taliban. As the Security Council, as the SRSG and many other members of the Security Council were condemning the fact that girls can't have secondary education in Afghanistan, he has now written a letter saying that girls won't be allowed to go to university in future. So the Taliban is doubling down on its restrictions on female education. What is the reaction from the Secretary General, and what is the reaction that this came out at 9:30 at night in Kabul? It seems to have been deliberately timed, defiantly timed, for the Security Council meeting.
Well, I mean, I think for the timing, you'll have to ask the Taliban. What it is, it's clearly another broken promise from the Taliban. We have seen since their takeover, and also in the past months, just a lessening of the space for women, not only in education, but access to public areas, their non-participation in the public debate. It's another very troubling move, and it's difficult to imagine how a country can develop can deal with all of the challenges that it has without the active participation of women and the education of women.
While it's very nice to hear those words from you, and obviously we will report them, we actually have in the building the Secretary General's special representative. I'm not really sure why she wasn't doing a stakeout anyway, given this was her first visit to New York. Can we, as a matter of priority, get to the stakeout at the end of consultations, please?
Asked and I will ask again.
Thanks.
Okay, Edith.
Thank you, Steph. In Germany, a court convicted a 97-year-old former secretary at a Nazi concentration camp during World War II in what many believe may be the last trial involving a participant in the Holocaust. Does the Secretary General have any comment?
I think it shows that it's never too late to ensure that there is some accountability for crimes committed on such horrific nature as the Holocaust. Deji.
Steph, I'm sorry to ask you questions given your vocal condition, but I just want to, I just want to have some clarification on yesterday SG's decision to convey a summit about climate ambition that would be happening in next year, September next year. How would this summit be different from what we have in COP27 when he talked about no exceptions, no compromises?
It's about ensuring that we keep the political pressure on member states. There is, the COPs have a certain. The COPs are very important events, but they're also they're a very technical event linked to a conference of parties. Having something in the General Assembly provides an opportunity to increase the political pressure and to ensure that the messages don't just rise up once a year during COP, and also at a time where the world's media's attention is on what's happening in this building.
Okay, maybe I know maybe it's too early to ask this question, but does the Secretary General expected some result or agreement or declaration, whatever you name it, from that ambition summit?
I think he doesn't want to see any backsliding. He doesn't want to see any regurgitating of promises already made. And he also is very focused on fighting this idea of greenwashing, of empty promises by either governments or the private sector. Ibtisam.
Sorry, back to Tunisia. Any comments on the arrest of the former Prime Minister?
Well, I think we've seen the reports. It's incumbent on the Tunisian authorities to ensure that his rights are respected and that his due process is afforded. All right, I think Abdelhamid, you had a question?
Yes, Stéphane. I have a follow-up to questions of Ibtisam. There is another sad case this morning when the Palestinian prisoner Nasser Abu Hamid, HMEID, has been diagnosed with cancer, and many human rights appeal for the Israeli authority to let him spend the last few days in the arms of his mom, but Israeli denied that, and he passed away this morning. And there is a full strike in the West Bank and Gaza for this inhumane medical negligence of a Palestinian prisoner. Any comment on that?
Well, I mean, we've seen the report. I think it's very important that all prisoners be afforded the right health care and to ensure that their needs are met.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Kubiak, please rescue me.